We have one candle lit already, but I want to give a chance for folks to think about what they might want to share, a joy or a sorrow. We'll start with the joy of this candle already lit at the beginning. Alice writes, "Next week, I'm going to Atlanta for Grandparents' Day at my grandson's daycare." Hooray. I will light a candle of sorrow again for Linda Austin, reaching out to family and to all who were touched by her passing a week ago. Joanne.
A candle of joy for a visit from my grandson.
Joanna, a candle of joy for the visit of your grandson. Wonderful. From Judith Moore, a candle of joy for the turnout yesterday, all in support of John and family at the memorial. Alice. So a candle, thank you, Alice, a candle, I would say, of celebration and joy for the music yesterday in the memorial for Janice Cannon and taking over directing the choir as a gift to John and Carlene, as always, with the beautiful music on piano throughout the service. Emery. All right. And so Emery's lighting a candle of joy on the anticipation of Valentine's Day next week, because the love of Valentine's Day. And I see that you are dressed and ready for it. Yes. Very nice. Good. Good. Let's remember that our community is strengthened in the ways in which we share with one another the things from our hearts, the things that are weighing on our thoughts, the joys that help us leap up and speak with one another, the sorrows, and maybe by sharing, we share a bit of that burden with one another and make our days a little lighter. Let the glow of these candles remind us of this indeed lovely, wonderful community. I have a few announcements. Let's see, let's start with the book study group announcement page. You will see on the upper left side, we have a starting date. Maybe just call it an organizational date. It would really help me to know if you're among those who are going and ordering this book or need help ordering this book, so that I get you on an email list with the others who have approached me, so that we can talk about Mistakes and Miracles, Congregations on the Road to Multiculturalism, written by two Unitarian Universalists. This is the Unitarian Universalist Association Common Read, which means all across the nation. We are studying this book and the idea of multiculturalism and all the mistakes along the way. We can learn from other people's mistakes and make our own instead. Let's do it that way. We have announcements of other things that were coming up, men's group, meditation group. I'm actually lousy as a reporter of the newsletter, but if you get the newsletter, you've seen all the wonderful things coming up. We've had a couple of things that we've mentioned that are outside resources, things that are coming up the end of this week or early next week out in the community that help us explore various spiritualities, or something that helps us with our multiculturalism, anti-racism work. This is something that, man, if I could keep them all in my head, you'd be so informed, but I can't. So I just beg you, please go and look it up. And if you're not already on our news list, fill out a visitor card and say that you want to get the information. It looks like we've got a couple that are out there from last week. Sorry if you missed this week, but we'll catch up and we'll get news out to all of you newcomers among us. And speaking of newcomers, I want to say welcome to everyone. Welcome to the people online who were all here yesterday and now are sleeping in. Welcome to all the folks who are here in this room. Loving the family contingent over here. You don't all have to sit there, but I understand you love doing that. Welcome to our ensemble, our singers who will be singing this morning a relevant song for the topic of the day. I think I could make a salt packet work with my sermon, because as a minister I can figure out how everything fits together, but I love the way this song that you're going to sing fits. Welcome. This congregation is one that welcomes people of different paths, from different religious backgrounds. Wherever you're coming from, wherever you are on your path, we are here for your spiritual growth and development. Our mission is to support individual spiritual journeys and to promote social, economic, and environmental justice. So welcome. We're trying now this year to read that mission statement at least at the beginning of each month so that we remember as members, oh, that's what we're about. Oh, okay. I now look to the singers that we may start with the beautiful music.
Good morning. I'm going to need this down a little bit. Our opening words this morning were written by the Reverend Erica Hewitt, who serves a congregation in Maine and also has served the entire UUA in its worship arts. Our words are in several voices. Reverend Bob and I will begin, and then we'll invite you to join us. The word courage comes from the Latin cur, which means heart. According to poet Mark Nepo, the original use of the word courage meant to stand by one's core. And this is a quote, a striking concept that reinforces the belief found in almost all traditions that living from the center is what enables us to face whatever life has to offer.
To encourage means to hearten, to impart strength and confidence. This is our work as a religious community, to encourage one another, to be bold in engaging the world around us, as well as what scares us internally, to give one another the confidence and heart to live as fully as possible.
With full hearts, we affirm our relationships with one another. We recognize our agency and our connective power, and we accept our responsibility to be bold and courageous. So now that we have said our opening words and Reverend Bob has reminded us that the first part of our mission is to support one another on our spiritual journeys. Well, our spiritual journeys, that's our lives, isn't it? So I invite you now to greet each other in recognition of our common worth and dignity, and in recognition that we're here to put heart into each other. We don't just have each other's back. We're joined at the heart. So if you would rise as you're willing and able and pass this greeting from the heart. It feels wonderful to greet each other. It feels wonderful to be together. And now that you've sat down, I'll invite you to rise again as you're willing and able and join in our opening hymn. It's number 1008 in the teal hymnal, but the words will be on the screen, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. And now we'll light our chalice with unison words. Thank you. From Cooper Garrett, O divine love. O divine love, with the kindling of this flame, may we realize and love our true selves, our true round belly selves, our true bags under our eyes selves, our true naturally hairy selves, our true wrinkles on our skin selves. May our self-love help keep our chalice ablaze. And now Kevin Lausch will come forward with words of wisdom for all ages. Thanks, Kevin.
Good morning. So this is the month of love. Our theme through Soul Matters is love, and we're in the middle of the 30 days of love that Unitarians celebrate. And so our book today is, of course, called Love. It's written by Matt de la Pena and illustrated by Lauren Long. And in this book, as we go through it, see all the many simple and profound ways that love is expressed, the need for love by all people, the way they experience it wherever they are, and think about maybe your need for love and how you experience it. In the beginning, there was light, and two wide-eyed figures standing near the foot of your bed, and the sound of their voices is love. A cab driver plays love softly on his radio while you bouncing back with the bumps of the city, and everything smells new and smells like life. Love, too, is the smell of the crashing waves and a train whistling blindly in the distance. And each night the sky above your trailer turns the color of love. In a crowded concrete park, you toddle toward summer sprinklers while older kids skip rope and run up the slide, and soon you're running along with them, and the echo of your laughter is love. On the night the fire alarm blazes, you're pulled from sleep and whisked into the street where a quiet old lady is pointing to the sky. Stars shine long after they flamed out, she tells you, and they shine the shine which is love. But it's not only stars that flame out, you discover. It's summer, too, and friendships and people. One day you find your family nervously huddled around the TV, and when you ask what happened, they answer with silence and shift between you and the screen. And in your dream that night, you're searching for a love that seems lost. You open and close drawers, lift cushions, empty old toy bins, but there is nothing. You wake with a start in the arms of a loved one who bends to your ear and whispers, "It's okay, it's okay, it's love." In time, you learn to recognize a love overlooked, a love that wakes at dawn and rides to work on the bus, a slice of burned toast that tastes like love. And it's love in each crease of your grandfather's face as he lowers himself onto an overturned bucket to fish. And it's love in the rustling leaves of gnarled trees lined behind the flower fields. And it's love in the made-up stories your uncles tell in the backyard between wild horseshoe throws. And the man in rags outside the subway station plays love notes that lift into the sky like tiny beacons of light. And the face staring back in the bathroom mirror, this too is love. So when the time comes for you to set off on your own, heavy winds will sweep past your building, and great gray clouds will congregate above. Your loved ones will stand there like puddles underneath their umbrellas, holding you tight and kissing you and wishing you luck. But it won't be luck you'll leave with, because you'll have love. You'll have love, love, love. And thank you. And I hope you were able to see all the many ways that people see love, find love, need love. And I hope you can reach out this month and help someone feel love too. And now Wyatt will come up and light our children's chalice, and then we will sing them out.
We do not exist just for ourselves. Our love extends to those in the community. It's said that sometimes the highest form of giving is anonymously giving so that the person who receives has no clue where it came from. I say the highest form of giving in whatever way it eventually reaches its recipient is one that's given with joy. Given with joy and recognition that we're all in it together. Our special collection for the month of February is for the Bread of Life, just across the corner from us here. And the Bread of Life, some of you pre-pandemic were volunteers there and maybe fell away from being able to help out in person. But still, we've had people bring in food or people who made sure they made monetary gifts. Bread of Life has meals served 5 days a week from 12 to 2. They have delivery available for shut-ins with limited availability. Pantry boxes are available on the first Friday of every month. And emergency boxes are available on request. This is a Transylvania County Community Soup Kitchen. The envelopes in the collection basket will designate whatever you put into them for this special collection. Anything put into the plate in general will go with gratitude to the needs of this congregation. We will now receive the morning offering. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Gypsy. What is given in love we receive with great joy, and we say, thank you. I invite you to breathe deep. Let it out. To settle in your chair, feet on the ground. Eyes open, eyes closed, in whatever way to enter into this time of prayer and meditation. Spirit of love and life, we who are gathered here come with the joys and the sorrows we carry from our lives into this place of community. May we live up to the hope that we have for community, and the sharing with one another, the listening with two ears to what is said by those around us, the opening up from a place of vulnerability to mention those things that are hard, that leave us grieving, as well as the excitements and joys of our lives. We celebrate the chance to be at Grandparents' Day. We celebrate the joy of music and the contributions of those talents of those around us. We grieve with those who have suffered losses, who've come to fresh grief or anniversaries of love felt from the past and echoes in the present. For those things that have been left unspoken, we also leave a space open in our hearts and in our conversations to hear more from one another. And, Spirit of love and life, may we have the bravery to speak through whatever misconceptions or masks may be between us, that we might be honest and true in this, our beloved community. These, the meditations of our minds and the prayers of our hearts, we hold now in the silence. In the names of all those known and unknown, remembered and forgotten, in the names of all the helpers of humankind, we say amen, blessed be. The reading that I have this morning is called Telling by Laura Ann Hershey. You may have noticed in the children's storybook and now on the screen the images of folks of all different walks of life. Maybe this is not appropriate for all folks, that it's an ableist word. Well, folks who are in life with us, all different backgrounds. Laura Ann Hershey was born in 1962 and died in 2010. Was known as a poet, a journalist, a popular speaker, a feminist, and a disabilities rights activist and consultant. known to have parked her wheelchair in front of buses, or she was one of the leaders of a protest against paternalistic attitudes and images of people with disabilities. She was a regular columnist for the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, and her own website, Crip Commentary, get the word? Crip Commentary, was published in a variety of magazines and websites. She was admired for her wit, her ability to structure strong arguments in the service of justice, and her spirited refusal to let social responses to her spinal muscular atrophy define the parameters of her life as anything less than a full human experience. For she was the recipient of the Lambda Literary Fellowship, and after Hershey's death, following an unexpected illness in 2010, her partner, Robin Stevens, told the Denver Post she was a genius who lived with disability and lived well. This is the reading telling. What you risk telling your story, you will bore them. Your voice will break, your ink spill and stain your coat, and no one will understand. Their eyes become fences. You will park yourself forever on the outside, your differentness once and for all revealed and dangerous. The names you give to yourself will become epithets. Your happiness will be called bravery or denial. Your sadness will justify their pity. Your fear will magnify their fears. Everything you say will prove something about their God or their economic system. Your feelings that change day to day, kaleidoscopic, will freeze in place, brand you forever, justify anything they decide to do with you. Those with power can afford to tell their story or not. Those without power risk everything to tell their story and must. Someone, somewhere, will hear your story and decide to fight, to live, and refuse compromise. Someone else will tell her own story, risking everything. I started preparing this sermon based on our Soul Matters packet this month and looking at a quote inside, a quote from James Baldwin. James Baldwin speaking from an African American context to all of America. Love takes off the masks that we fear we cannot live without and know we cannot live within. I'm going to say that again. Love takes off the masks that we fear we cannot live without and know that we cannot live within. James Baldwin says, I use the word love here, not merely in the personal sense, but as a state of being, a state of grace, not in the infantile American sense of being made happy, but in the tough and universal sense of quest and daring and growth. Why in the world do we speak about love in congregations? Why? I read online that something like 67% of all popular songs from 1960 to the present are about love. They have trending ways of talking about love, and it might be more romantic words from 1960 and more sexual words from right now in a rap song. I don't know, but 67%, just barely rounded over 2/3 of the popular songs. We sing about, speak about, exchange cards about love. What love is it? Is it a broad enough, bold enough love to speak the truth of our story? As our reading said, are we brave enough to tell who we really are? Or as James Baldwin says, know with enough love that we have to take the masks off and be seen? Whose stories, when you think of love, whose stories show up on the Hallmark Channel? Whose stories showed up in the worst hell of our existence, middle school? Who taught us to put the mask on for our own safety? Who taught us that maybe if we showed our real self, we were unlovable on the outside, not listened to, disrespected? Religions speak of love in very interesting ways as it relates to what I'm going to say, loving oneself. The essential of loving oneself, of loving oneself enough to be able to realize you cannot live inside a mask. To love yourself enough to say, the deck of cards I've been dealt has jokers in it. To love oneself enough to know you can still serve someone you love burnt toast and they get it that it's love. Or you can dance on the roof of your trailer home and know the love in that moment. Or you could, well, you name it. To love oneself sometimes has been taught that the greatest love of all in religious stories are those who sacrifice their lives out of love for others. You got to be from a pretty strong place to be able to give and give and give again. And usually at this time, the people say, yeah, it's true love when the person serves all the lepers or carries the burden of others. Rebecca Ann Parker, a colleague in our movement, former president of the Star King School for the Ministry, had written in Proverbs of Ashes, Violence, Redemptive Suffering, and Search for What Saves Us. I went to a lecture by Rebecca Ann Parker drawing out the violence in the way words have been twisted to make it seem as if there's a certain kind of love that people are destined to always do and sacrifice. And this is an excerpt from Rebecca Ann Parker. I recognized that Christianity had taught me that sacrifice is the way of life. I could see that when theology presents Jesus' death as God's sacrifice of his beloved child for the sake of the world. It teaches that the highest love is sacrifice. To make sacrifice or be sacrificed is virtuous or redemptive. But what if that's not true? What if nothing or very little is saved? What if the consequence of sacrifice is simply pain, the diminishment of life, fragmentation of the soul, abasement, and shame? What if the severing of life is merely destructive of life and not the path of love or courage or trust and faith? What if the performance of sacrifice is a ritual in which some human beings bear loss and others are protected from accountability or moral expectations? I've had a couple congregants come to me or write to me after sermons in which I say how we can reach out and understand one another and say, but what about the abuser? And I think this quote goes straight to that. That there's some people who say, but I'm living up to the highest value by going again and again to the person who brings me pain and sacrificing my life for that person, for the greater good. And maybe in truth you were taught that by your religious family, by your Sunday school teachers. That's not it. What we practiced for the first time here, this greeting one another, and you got it wrong, but it was lovely to see you doing it, where we said, can you bow to each other? Can you do this? And just recognize one another. And you went into coffee hour mode like that. See, I'm trying to, here, I'll do it with two hands, like a namaste. The holy in me sees the holy in you. And you got to be to the place in which you acknowledge that there is a holy in you. And you got to be brave enough to see in another person something of that. We're going to try it again and again. Week after week, we're going to try this. And we know that some people are still very afraid of transmission of germs and things like that. So notice we didn't say shake hands with each other or kiss each other or hug each other. Like do this. You didn't fail. You did really well. But you didn't get it right. We'll try again. I talk about it this way because of the Hindu ultima prima, the highest form of love. And this is a different way of thinking about self-love. I had a little bit of study of Eastern religions, but I still may get this wrong. But I want to bring this in. Here's a quote from online. There's a cycle to everything. The love that started by directing towards others is again directed towards the inside and the self. Atma prima could be translated as self-love. And the Indian mystical poet Kabir says, the river that flows in you also flows in me. So we could do that. The river that flows in you also flows in me. When we bow and greet one another, when we turn to one another. It means that what we see in others, we see in ourselves. And once we achieve that level of self-love, we recognize that we are all one. Rumi says, now I know, I gave you a lot of Rumi last time. I'm going to give you Rumi quote again. I, you, he, she, we. In the Garden of Mystic Lovers, these are not true distinctions. These are not true distinctions. In the Hindu sense, getting to this level of love, self-love and love of other, is that we are children of the highest. And that love knows no boundaries and thus becomes unconditional. Now, I temper this with what I just said before from Rebecca Ann Parker. Oh, I love you, you love me, this is great, please don't hit me anymore. There are a lot of instances in which you just need to step away from people and not bow to them. There are a lot of programs out there that might do some good for the people who need to instead see the divinity in you. Okay? So be careful here for those of you who say, but Bob, you're preaching love for everyone. Yes, fine. Walk away from them if you can, or get help in being away from them. I'm going to bring in another sense of community, false community. So there's a falseness in some of the love that we might have for each other if it's really not working right. But there's a false community too. Any of you read M. Scott Peck? Way, way back, like This Somewhat Faded Spine, The Road Less Traveled, or People of the Lie, or he wrote one on, I can't find it on my shelf, but fortunately it's online. So he wrote one about community and what is true community, and talked about the different drum, community making and peace, and founded an organization with a bunch of others called Community Building. It's based on the principles identified by M. Scott Peck in his book, and a group of 11 colleagues further developed the process into the work of the Foundation of Community Encouragement. Community needs encouragement, so this is a foundation for community encouragement. And it was expanded in his book, A World Waiting to be Born. I'll quote, he states that community is a group of individuals who have learned how to communicate honestly with each other, whose relationships go deeper than their masks of composure, and who have developed some significant commitment to rejoice together, mourn together, delight in each other, and make others' conditions their own. He goes on to compare a community to a precious gem when he states a group becomes a community in somewhat the same way that a stone becomes a gem, through a process of cutting and polishing, and once cut and polished, it's something beautiful. But to describe its beauty, the best we can do is describe its facets. Community, like a gem, is multifaceted. Here are some facets laid out in his writings. Community has to be inclusive. Community must be realistic and have consensus. Community must have contemplation and self-awareness. Community must be a safe place. Community must show vulnerability and peacemaking, and community must be able to express differences gracefully. Community must be a place where all are leaders, and community must have an atmosphere of love. So what does this mean? All these facets of community, all of this idea of self-love, the Hindu, James Baldwin taking off the mask mentioned again, a mask of composure. False community in M. Scott Peck. Well, here it was. Here's M. Scott Peck again. Community is and must be inclusive. The enemy of community is exclusivity. Groups that exclude others because they are poor or doubters or divorced or sinners or of some different race or nationality are not communities, they're cliques. Actually, defensive bastions against community. Ooh, a clique is a defensive bastion against community. There's some other ways in which it's like, who would we decide is on the ins or on the outs? And to get to true community in that sense is, how could we not admit these folks and still call ourselves a community? Unitarian Universalists have been pretty good at that, I think, over time. But we had to be taught. Yesterday, during the memorial service, a family member read from the Unitarian minister, Robert Fulgham's All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, on common thoughts on common things, and the list of what you do. Well, it was appropriate because it was knowing Linda, a teacher, helping those get educated into that. This book, though, has a, but wait a minute moment, in which Robert Fulghum writes about an experience with children. This is why we need to be educated about community. Why are you killing the poor moths? He asks. Moths are bad, says the kid. Everybody knows that, says another. Sure, moths eat your clothes. I could not sway them, he said. All moths are bad. All butterflies are good, period. Moths and butterflies are not the same thing. Moths sneak around in the dark munching your sweater and are ugly. Butterflies hang out with the flowers in the daytime and are pretty. Never mind any facts or what silkworm moths are responsible for or what poisonous butterflies do. With a firmness that would have made John Calvin proud, moths were condemned, now and forevermore. Amen. Out of the mouths of babes may come gems of wisdom, but also garbage. That ended my game with them. I stomped off, telling them I wouldn't play. I went to bed thinking that if the future is in the hands of maniacs like these, we're in trouble. The next morning, the youngest came to me with a large dead moth in one hand and a magnifying glass in the other. Look, he says, this moth looks like a little teddy bear with wings and feathers on its head. You like teddy bears, I ask. Yes, I like teddy bears. Do you like small flying teddy bears with feathers on their head? Yes, he says, I think I do. One must sometimes at least practice what one preacheth, and if one should look at the moths without prejudice and with grace, one might be forced to consider small boys in somewhat more generous light. Some moths make silk, and some small boys make sense. I really can't go on with the sermon after a quote like that. But whether you get it from James Baldwin or you get it from the Hindus, you get it from a rights activist for disability rights and being seen for who you are, you get it from the words of the song Covenant. Love is what? The doctrine of this church? The quest of truth is its sacrament? And service? Yeah. It all ties together, folks. Love of self without the mask. Bravery of self to walk away from the violence against that self, or to use that bravery to be an example to others, to be real, means that we could have a real community. We won't live Lord of the Flies existence or Lord of the Moths existence. Maybe we'll get to live our lives. Maybe others will see us being brave. And maybe we'll get to feel that love reflected back. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Our closing hymn is number 1051, We Are. Who are we? All the things that make us up of who we are and the love that we've had. That will be on the screen. I invite you to rise and sing as you're willing and able. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, If you have lost the song from the star that tells you who you are, may you find it once again. If you need a community, may you be brave enough and helpful enough to tell your true self without mask to another, that others might be true right back to you. For in this way, we might build something of safety, bravery, in a world that desperately needs real people showing themselves to be connected with one another. Go out in peace. Save the moths. And come back in love.